Good evening. Our top story today, Justin Herbert's foot. I don't want to say that we're being sold a bill of goods, but I'm not sure that we're talking about this injury and its potential impact as a fantasy community. So I want to take a little bit of a deeper dive into this plantar fascia injury that he suffered and how long he's expected to be out. And is his week 1 truly in jeopardy? It may be so, but I'll tell you why. We're also going to talk about the Steelers. It seems like they actually have a real quarterback competition brewing because of another quarterback injury, Russell Wilson. Tons of injury news, guys. Jonathan Brooks, obviously, he's on the NFI list, but his coach made some news also saying he may not be ready until multiple weeks into the season. So we're going to talk about a lot of this stuff. My name is Toomey, go by FF Strategist. We're going to talk about all of this training camp injury news, roster developments, depth chart changes on Player Profiler today. All right. Happy Sunday, everybody. Just getting the screens together. I know you guys love hearing the inside baseball. I'm joking. All right. So, first story, biggest story. Justin Herbert. His week 1 may truly be in jeopardy. Make sure if you guys have feedback or anything, put in a comment. Also, I always got to say, like, comment, subscribe. Make sure that you push the notification bell to make sure you get notified whenever we go live. Somebody is doing this spot every single day, so just make sure you're tuned in for that. All right, so Justin Herbert. It's his week 1 in jeopardy. All right, so doctors have diagnosed him with plantar fascia injury in his right foot. I'm not going to put my foot on the screen. It's super gross. But they're basically recommending that he stays in a walking boot for approximately like 2 weeks or so before beginning a gradual return to play and ramping him up in that manner. It's not really known if he suffered this injury on one specific play or if he's just been dealing with this injury for a little bit. So it's really not super sure. It is funny that even that day where he was diagnosed with the injury, he ran in a decently long touchdown run and celebrated with his teammates. So we're not sure if it happened on that play. We're not sure if he's just been dealing with it and he's been kind of gritting through it. But basically, it's that really thick ligament that connects the heel of your foot to your toes. It is a thick ligament it's a thick ligament. And so they're not really saying if it's like a tear, if it's bruise. I don't know if you could even bruise a ligament, but they're not saying if it's like a full tear, partial tear, which actually kind of matters as it relates to football. Apparently, based on all people who've dealt with this injury, it's significantly more painful to deal with a partial tear than it is to deal with just a full tear of that ligament. We've actually seen people, namely like Tyler Smith last year, he fully tore the plantar fascia ligament. I think it was like the second to the last week of the season, sat out the Commanders game, then played in the first game of the playoffs where they got blown out. But he played every snap of that game, so that at least gives you confidence. If it was like a full tear, not as much concern I would have. I mean, I know he's a quarterback versus like a left guard / left tackle, but he's putting a lot of pressure on that foot defending his quarterback. So I do think that is at least a good reason to be optimistic if it was a full tear. But I feel like if it was a full tear, we would know that. So I'm going to just think it's a partial tear, which is kind of the concerning thing. Now, Jim Harbaugh has said that he expects Herbert to be ready by week 1. This is his quote exactly. So the preparation, the work continues, he said. He's not on the field in practice, but in the meeting room, still in the training environment. That chemistry, that rapport you build with the position players, his teammates, that continues, says Harbaugh. And so, yeah, I think like it's a tough one, guys. I think he's going to be dealing with this pain all season, especially if it's a partial tear. We have a really limited amount of information from quarterbacks who've had this injury. Two of the main ones that we've seen in the past were like Peyton Manning and Drew Brees, who have very different results. Peyton Manning, he suffered this injury in 2015, but this was already his last year in the NFL, so he's already kind of old and decrepit at this point. He was playing awful that year, suffered this injury that allowed Brock Osweiler to come in and like add a little juice to the Broncos team. Got to the playoffs, then went back to Peyton Manning. He still played like trash, but they won the Super Bowl. But he was technically out for multiple weeks and wasn't playing on that foot. But again, you could say like they just kind of wanted to see what juice they could get from a young Brock Osweiler at the time. Now, Drew Brees, 2015, same year, They missed the playoffs, but he tore his plantar fascia. I don't know if they both tore them against the Detroit Lions that year, which would be weird, but I feel like they did. But yeah, Drew Brees suffered this injury late in the season as well. He missed no time at all. He actually played the final 2 games of the season. They weren't a playoff team, but he threw for 400 yards the next week in a win. So really didn't have that much of an impact on Drew Brees. So really, when you have these types of partial tears, you're typically put in a non-weight bearing situation for a couple of weeks. You're telling you just don't put any weight on it. Then they put them in a boot, which is where kind of Justin Herbert is right now. Usually within I think they'll start to transition to shoes. The initial period athletes usually wear a boot and then they transition to shoes once they have a normal gait and minimal pain by 4 to 6 weeks. All right. So I don't know if they're going to plan to put him in the boot for 4 to 6 weeks. That's not really the way they're talking about it. But basically, if you think about it, 4 to 6 weeks, we have 5 weeks left until the season starts. So it is definitely something to keep an eye on. But my headline, just to kind of I'm trying to trim down my yapping, and I feel like I'm not doing a good job with the story. But my headline on this one is, it could be a big deal, but it also could be absolutely nothing. But this is enough to just completely remove him off my draft boards for me. Unless it's like your dead last pick in your draft or something, I'm just not interested in the Justin Herbert show this year. We all know the multiple reasons why we weren't thinking about it before. It was obviously all about the Greg Roman, Jim Harbaugh system that is incredibly run heavy. I think it's going to be really efficient for him, and I think that Justin Herbert, from a quarterback standpoint in the NFL, is going to have a good year, probably one of his better years as just an NFL leader of a team. But I don't think that's going to translate to fantasy. And this definitely is going to hurt him, I think, on the field in a way where I just don't want to take the risk. Even if he's maybe like the Drew Brees example and it's not that impactful, it's going to impact him on the margins because there's just a lot of things you need to do, especially if that's your right plant foot and he's a right-handed quarterback. So yes, his right foot is the one that has the partial tear, and that's what we're going to be dealing with. So this is the impact I would expect to see on the field. So escaping the pocket is not going to be as seamless and as easy as it would if he was fully healthy. Granted, I do think that injury, I think that injury probably had occurred when he made that one scramble in practice. So not to say that running is completely off the table, but you got to be careful with a quarterback who's already dealing with that injury. Escaping the pocket, driving the ball down the field, I'd be worried about the mechanics getting worse as the season goes on if you're not able to put a lot of power into that right foot. And then this is a really heavy play action scheme. So that's just some of the stuff like this. A lot of the play action just calls for a lot of steps when you're doing your drop back. So I just worry about that with the quarterback dealing with the right foot injury. But obviously the bigger issues is just injury. I think there's a good possibility he could just fully injure this. He could fully tear it. He may not be able to deal with it like Tyler Smith was with a full tear. But one of the things that was really interesting and very concerning to me, and this is something, especially based off of how last year went, the beginning of the year, that you want to keep an eye on. You got to worry about those compensation injuries. And one of the biggest areas that may lead to a compensation injury is the Achilles. That's kind of the target location. If you're dealing with this partial tear and you start to compensate, your Achilles may start to take on some of that additional load. And we all know if you pop the Achilles, you're done for the season. So there's just so many reasons why it's kind of concerning to me this year. I wasn't really drafting him in fantasy. I'm definitely hands off of him right now. I do think that not some major hit, but I do think all the pass catchers take a mini downgrade, maybe 1 or 2 spots, not rounds, spots, legit. And I do think this is, again, going to further emphasize the run game. Honestly, I feel like the favorite back out of the backfield for me still is J.K. Dobbins. I've been talking to you guys about that for the last few weeks, and we've started to see the reports. He's getting a ton of first-team reps. He's splitting with Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards is still kind of getting himself back healthy. And it would not surprise me if J.K. Dobbins has a pretty decent year with a lot of volume in this scheme. It doesn't seem like Kamani Vidal, at least right now, is not charging up the depth chart to take a spot. All right, so that's the first story. That's what I feel about Justin Herbert. I do think that we need to just keep our eyes on this one. So we're going to talk about a lot of the other stories that are happening with training camps. There's just so much news we've got to talk about on the other side of this break about the draft kit.
Hey, it's the Podfather of great news. The draft kit is live. It is world famous. Why? Because it is the best resource for winning fantasy football championships that exists. There are rankings and cheat sheets for every format you can imagine. We have projections both at the team level and the player level. And wherever you are, you can click on a player, open them up, and see in-depth written analysis about what to expect in fantasy football from that player this year. And then you can click on the team and you can get even more in-depth analysis, all the drivers of fantasy production, both in a positive and negative direction for that team, including a signature trend. And the graphics are incredible. So these team insights, they give you the team level projections, the vacated targets, the vacated ARs. And we added a bunch of features. Individual cheat sheets for Theo and Billy and Dario. So you could take your favorite analyst and download their personal draft cheat sheet. And then in the commissioners section, Memphis Young lays out everything you need to know to manage a league. The best minds in the industry contributing analysis. It's certainly not the most inexpensive draft kit on the market, but it is the best. PlayerProfiler.com/draft kit. PlayerProfiler.com/draft kit. Go get it.
Go get that draft kit, guys. So one thing you could do for me right now to make sure that you get that draft kit, put in the earliest draft you have. I'm not giving away anything. I just want to see what is the earliest draft that you guys have. Like, so you have one coming up this week, you have one coming up in the next week. Let me know. I'm trying to get a feel for how often and how early people are starting to draft. I never allow, if I'm the commissioner, we're not drafting before the third preseason game. Even I know this nowadays, it's like kind of like a BS game. But I try my best just to make sure we get through all the preseason games, all the injuries, and then we draft. But I know that a lot of people are really different. So in the comments and in the chat, put the date of your earliest draft, and we'll talk about the next story. All right, so is Justin Fields going to be the week 1 starter for the Steelers? I don't know, man. Steelers fans, let me know what you think, but I don't know. Like, it's definitely getting juicy now, for sure. So apparently Fields is obviously impressed during training camp, and he's really pushing to make the case that he should be the starter. And you could obviously see the additional rushing element, and even though I guess you'd say his pocket passing is nowhere near what Russell Wilson's is, Russell Wilson not being healthy is hurting him. Russell Wilson dealing with a calf injury. We just talked about that story about how concerned I am on these preseason calf injuries potentially leading to something with these older quarterbacks. It's something that is in the back of my head, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's the back of the Steelers' heads. But yeah, he's just started like getting closer and closer, doing some handoffs. He's doing his off the side of the field work. Russell Wilson is, but he's just not there yet to full participation. And Justin Fields is taking advantage of it. He's fully integrated with the team. Seems like the team is like kind of like rallying around him a little bit. I know there was actually like a scuffle that broke out in relation to Justin Fields. I think like he had scored on the defense, and I think then TJ Watt like kind of took a shot at Justin Fields, and then George Pickens came out of nowhere, took a shot at TJ Watt, and then they got into this big old scuffle. But it also tells you like this team kind of like they're defending their guy. And I mean, especially number 14, like they're defending their guy. And I would not be surprised if we see Justin Fields. And so because of that, like really big energy shift since the beginning of the summer, since he was traded to the Steelers, it's like he's definitely worth a stash late in your drafts. That's my headline on this. Is like we can't ignore the Justin Fields stories anymore. I'm not saying go draft him in the 11th round in a redraft league or anything like that. But if you say you have a quarterback situation where you feel fine about, but you don't feel excited about, like let's say you end up with a quarterback like a Jared Goff, who's really good, solid, but maybe that upside's not going to be there, especially in like a 4-point for passing touchdown league. I throw a Justin Fields on my bench just in case, just to see what happens. It does seem like Arthur Smith, when he is on the field, they are doing a lot of quarterback run stuff. And we know in fantasy that is a big deal. Last year, he was QB18 in a down year. I'm not saying that he was amazing. But before that, he was QB6 the year before that, where he was rushing a lot. Right now, Justin Fields is going as quarterback 28. So you really are getting him for free at the end of your drafts. Again, if you have a quarterback who you just don't love the upside, or especially if they don't have any rushing upside, I would not mind taking a shot on Justin Fields, because I would not be surprised if this is the second first-round pick in a new location that Arthur Smith like reinvigorates into a second career, like he did with Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee. We all keep sleeping on the fact that Arthur Smith, even though in Atlanta it was tough, man, his offenses in Tennessee were lights out, and that's what he is again. He's an offensive coordinator. They were the 4th-ranked scoring offense and the 9th-ranked scoring offense when he was OC there for 2 years. And so I think that there is so much potential with Justin Fields and fantasy in this offense. And then your next question may be, okay, so then are we going to like drop the stock of a George Pickens if it's not Russell Wilson and if it's going to be Justin Fields? To me, not at all. We saw him support QB or wide receiver 6 last year, DJ Moore. Sorry, guys. And so I do think that Pickens is definitely same upside to me as it relates to Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. I think George Pickens is just going to be lights out this year. You guys know how I feel about that. And so, regardless of the quarterback, it does seem like Justin Fields actually having a really good connection in camp, not even just with him getting defended in a fight. I mean, like they are connecting in the red zone a ton in training camp. And George Pickens, I mean, especially with the injury to Roman Wilson, other weapons are starting to ascend. Like Calvin Austin's having a good camp, but no one's close to Pickens. So I still think that Pickens is safe. Still fine with Freiermuth. I'd prefer it if Russell Wilson was a quarterback for Freiermuth, but I'm fine with it. But definitely think that Justin Fields, if you have the option, especially if you have a deep bench and you don't like the upside of your starting quarterback, free flyer on the end of your bench, throw in Justin Fields, see what happens. All right, next story. All right, Jonathan Brooks. This one's a big deal. So I feel good that I've been telling people over the last 2 weeks, even though I'm a big Jonathan Brooks fan. I've been telling people the last 2 weeks, like, all right, so we now have to fade him. It was before the injury news came out, but it was like, yeah, the fact that he wasn't there the first day of training camp and didn't look like he was going to be, I was like, yeah, you got to drop him. You have to drop him down your ranks a little bit. Panthers head coach Dave Canales said that Jonathan Brooks will not play this preseason and will hopefully be ready by week 3 or 4. Yep. Hurts. If you guys are Brian or Jonathan Brooks truthers, let me know in the chat. I love Jonathan Brooks, man. Him in this scheme is so amazing. And we don't have a feel yet for Dave Canales. Maybe he's like being overcautious about that. But there's nothing to me that makes me think he's lying about it. I would not be surprised if he's not ready to go until week 3 or 4. And if that's the case, he shouldn't be going in the 7th round, 8th round, where I've seen him go recently. We obviously know he suffered an ACL injury at the end of his career at Texas. My headline is twofold, though, and I told you guys this a few weeks ago, and I'm still kind of really beating down on this point. So obviously, Chuba Hubbard's value has to go up. He's been looking explosive in camp. This is another guy who got hit and led to like a training camp fight. But I do expect his value, his ADP to go up. Right now, he's going as RB44, 13th round in PPR. And so, yeah, his ADP is going to rise. I don't want it to rise too crazy, but he's definitely worth getting one. Or he's definitely worth taking later in your drafts, especially for the first few weeks of the season. Because we all saw how, Dave Canales uses his running backs in this scheme, and it is so enticing. Let's see. This is a tough question. Keep one. Man. Sutton or Judy that's tough, brother. Oh, man. I'll keep Sutton. And I'm not happy about it. Or Shakir. I'm keeping Shakir. Thank you. Thank you. I'm keeping Shakir. Thank you. God, I was like, neither. Yeah, I'm keeping Shakir. All right, so we're talking about Chuba Hubbard. So his usage in the Dave Canales scheme. Dave Canales really does love to utilize his running back as a pivotal piece to move the ball down the field. Rachaad White last year, even though he didn't get to 1,000 yards because he's just not super efficient on the ground, he had 272 carries. That's tied for second with Christian McCaffrey. From like a route standpoint, like he is number 2 in routes run last year, number 3 in routes percentage, number 13th in target share, number 4 in weighted opportunities. I talked about the carries already. Like he's Rachaad White was a pivotal part of that offense, and I don't expect Chuba Hubbard to be that, but I do expect them to be heavily used. Him and Miles Sanders, but mostly him because he's the lead guy. And so I do think Chuba Hubbard's going to give you some solid weeks to begin your season. So if you have a guy who maybe enters the season dinged up, or you just need, like, you're going hero RB, and you just need somebody to start immediately while one of your other running backs kind of gets up to speed, and it maybe takes Chase Brown a few weeks to get up to speed, Chuba Hubbard's going to be a solid, reliable starter for you for the first few weeks of the season. However, I'm not completely throwing away Jonathan Brooks. I think that would be ridiculous. Like, Jonathan Brooks, he's going through like 7th through the 9th round right now in PPR. I'm going to let that ADP cool off because we know, like, based on this Dave Canales news, everyone's talking about it. His ADP is going to come down. And if he goes back to getting into the 11th round, I'm snagging him. I'm snagging Jonathan Brooks there. Because all that stuff I just said about Chuba Hubbard, Jonathan Brooks is he's better than Chuba Hubbard. He's better than Miles Sanders. He's better than Rachaad White when he's fully healthy. Now, it's going to be rough. Like, so let's say he doesn't just play through the first 4 weeks, and probably like another few weeks is going to take him to get going. But I do think once you get into your midseason, if you can withstand that, and if you have a deep enough bench to be able to hold an asset like Jonathan Brooks like that, because he may not go to IR, which would be kind of frustrating. Because if he's only going to be down for like 3 weeks, they may not use an IR spot for him, and we may not be able to put him on our IR spots in fantasy. However, when it comes time for the fantasy playoffs, and if he is the person that I've seen at Texas, this guy who literally can do it all, who is amazing through contact, who has breakaway speed, whose vision is the best vision I've seen in a couple drafts, honestly. In this Dave Canales scheme where they overload the running back with all this work, I think that Jonathan Brooks could be a league winner. And so I'm not sure. I've not seen anyone still saying that he has league winner potential. But it is going to take you being patient with him. That's what I was telling you a few weeks ago, and I'm still saying the same thing. If you're willing to be patient with Jonathan Brooks, let his ADP cool off and then snag him. All right. Let me know what you guys think in the chat. Next story, as I'm starting to fall apart slowly here. Oh, my gosh, man. All right, we're crushing through. All right, so I think some people have seen this news about Cooper Kupp. I'll restate. So Jeremy Fowler of ESPN said that the offense clearly runs through Cooper Kupp after observing practice during the team's training camp. And he said that Kupp is all the way back after he missed 5 games last year. And someone told Fowler that he is on a mission, on an absolute mission this season, and that he was deeply affected about not being on the field for parts of last year. That's great. Great. That is just that's music to my ears. Like Kupp, he was disappointing last year. He was wide receiver 24, 13.9 points per game, but obviously he was wide receiver 1 the previous 2 back-to-back seasons. But to me, I still think Kupp is a steal. He's going in the 4th round right now. And I also think the other side of this headline is, while Kupp is a steal, Puka is not a first-round pick. I've been saying that all offseason, and I feel like this is just one of those. I mean, it's confirming my bias, but it's definitely one of those stories that feeds into that narrative. Like, I just don't think it's going to be there for Puka to be the wide receiver 8 if Cooper Kupp is fully healthy. Now, that's the biggest caveat in the world for Cooper Kupp, but if he's fully healthy, he can go crazy because, like, his previous years, his target share was crazy. His target rate was nuts. I think that those things are things that may come down for just an older player and like his snap share. And also obviously having like a Puka Nacua in the wide receiver core with you. But everything else, he's going to be there. Like if he is Cooper Kupp, he's going to be winning his routes easy. He's going to be a red zone target easy. He's going to be doing all the things that we know Cooper Kupp to do. And so I think that the fact that they have that big of a gap in their ADP is just insanity. I know, like, friends of mine, like Justin Henry, he does a lot of content on YouTube. He finally made the switch of Cooper Kupp over Puka Nacua. I'm not doing that yet, but I definitely think that Puka Nacua should not be going 3 rounds ahead of Cooper Kupp. I think that is insane, and I am happily going to be taking the Cooper Kupp value at ADP. All right, let's go. Hey, Rob, I can't evaluate teams. It would be hard to do in this form, but hit me up on FF Strategist on TikTok, and I'll give you a team evaluation, all right? All right. All right, next story. Jamir Gibbs. Okay, so ESPN's Dan Graziano said that Jamir Gibbs is focused on improving as a receiver this offseason. He told reporters that they plan to use him both as like a slot receiver and a running back this year. That is music to my ears, man. He is such a good receiver. And the fact that they were not using him in that way last year was very frustrating. Very, very, very frustrating, guys. He caught 52 passes. He wasn't terrible at it, 316 yards and a touchdown. But like it's funny, based on Bijan's profile, and Bijan's a great receiver, very good receiver. But based on Bijan's profile and Gibbs' profile, you would think that their receiving roles would have switched their rookie seasons. Like Bijan was like the third leading running back in target share. Jamir Gibbs was nowhere close to that. Like they really had very different receiving seasons, and I was just hoping to get way more receiving work from Gibbs than we got. And so it's nice to see that they at least plan to do that. Now Gibbs was no scrub. Like he was RB8 in points per game last year. I think he had he was nearly 19 points per game, week 7 through 18 down the stretch where he got really cooking, especially when David Montgomery was injured. I think this is a guy who, to me, definitely he is locked in first round pick. Lock it in for me. The one concern I have is obviously David Montgomery. And also he's just one of those smaller backs. Like some of those guys this year, like Devin Achron, Jamir Gibbs, Kyron Williams, those running backs who are under 200 pounds who, if they got a certain amount of carries, I think they may start to fall apart. Gibbs is up there, so it's definitely a concern you have to keep an eye on. I mean, you are taking him at the top of his value. I fully understand it, but I still think the upside is there. One of the quotes that kind of caught me was Gibbs' offseason work has been limited by injury, and only recently did he elevate to full participant in camp practices. Maybe that was very broadly known, but I was not aware that he was dinged up at all. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on to see what exactly that was. But I do think that's really the only thing that's going to limit him. Injury risk, David Montgomery kind of capping his total upside. But I do think if he is able to tick up that receiving work, that'll compensate for those total touches going down because he's obviously an incredibly efficient player. I don't expect that efficiency to go down because David Montgomery is still there. If it was just the Jamir Gibbs show, there was absolutely no David Montgomery, his efficiency is going to come crashing down. But based on the way that they use them, based on the scheme, based on the offensive line, et cetera, his efficiency is going to be great. And now you're just going to increase that pass catching work. I think that it is lights out for him because you look at all of his receiving numbers. I'm going to just name all these stats. I'm going to name all these stats. I expect every single stat to go up or every single metric to go up for him as a receiver. Receiving yards up, receptions up, target share up, routes run up, route participation up, yards per reception. I expect that to go up too because they're using him down the field more. Yards per route run up, catch rate definitely up. I mean, he led the NFL in drops last year. That's just in running backs. That's not going to happen again. So there's so much untapped potential when you just unlock the receiving spigot and you leave the total touches or total carries with David Montgomery, the touchdown back and forth that he has with Montgomery, leave all that the same and you increase the receiving work. That's why we're excited about him. That's why he has RB1 potential. Okay. All right. Getting to the end of the main stories before we get into the quick hits, guys. So the next one is about Pacheco. This is somebody, I'll admit, I feel like I've just not been talking about this offseason. And let me know if you guys have any other players you want me to chat about in the comments. Put in the comments, okay? All right, so Andy Reid recently told reporters about Isaiah Pacheco that he is good with the fundamental protections. He's good with the technique and the fundamentals. When he was asked about filling the vacated passing downs role for the running back. And obviously this is referring to Jarrett McKinnon, who is not with the team right now. McKinnon apparently handled 55% of the third and fourth down work, as well as the long snaps and 50% in the 2-minute drill snaps. Excuse me. And so that is a big deal. McKinnon was getting like 20 snaps per game, around 11 third down snaps per game. He had 3 targets inside the 10-yard line in his red zone role, Jared McKinnon did. And all of that work, hypothetically, can just go to Pacheco, who's already dominating the first and second down stuff. Now, we got Prince who's factoring in. There's some other running backs in the mix. But I do think, like, this is the first time Pacheco, like, this is it. This is your backfield. Like, you truly are the guy on first through third downs, and let's see what happens. And so because of that, I think that he could eat up this role. I think he could tear it up. And this could be a la 2018 Kareem Hunt prior to suspension. That was the year he got suspended for kicking that girl. But if you think about it, very similar situations. I think the weapons on this offense are very similar now. You got a healthy Travis Kelce coming back into the mix. You add in a lot of receiver depth. That team previously in 2018 had Tyreek Hill. And 2018 was the first year that Patrick Mahomes went off with the 50 touchdowns. I'm expecting not 50 passing touchdowns for Patrick Mahomes, but Patrick Mahomes is my QB1, and I expect him to go crazy this year. And so I would not be surprised if he's touching 40 passing touchdowns. Like, I think that this could be that type of year. And you may say, all right, so if he has that passing work, the running back's going to suffer. Nope. So Kareem Hunt in 11 games had 14 touchdowns. He had 7 receiving touchdowns in those games. That's insanity. That's crazy. And I do think that Kareem Hunt, at that point of his career, is better than Isaiah Pacheco now, because that was only his, I think, 3rd year in the NFL, I believe. But still, like, it's the role. The role is there for you. The offensive line is good enough. And on the offense that's going to be significantly better, taking all those deep shots, you never could crowd the box on Patrick Mahomes, but for damn sure now, you got to leave those running lanes open. He's going to feast in this role. Just looking at how, like, the receiving kind of metrics matched up. Kareem Hunt in 2018, I think his target share was a little bit lower than Pacheco's last year. The routes run significantly close to it, but Kareem Hunt's routes run were more than Pacheco's per game. Route participation significantly higher for Kareem Hunt in 2018. Yards per reception was crazy. I don't think this will repeat. But Kareem Hunt had 14.5 yards per reception. That's just nuts. Pacheco had 5.5. So 14.5 versus 5.5. That's not going to be the same relationship. But it at least tells you, like, there's some big play opportunities here. If Patrick Mahomes decides to use Pacheco like he used Kareem Hunt in his first year as a starter. And the thing that I really love about Pacheco is we've seen him with the ball in his hands. We've seen what he could do as a receiver. He's good. He actually had the 2nd highest catch rate in the NFL from the running back position. This year, I'm talking about with Kareem Hunt, his catch rate was number 23rd. It was, like, significantly worse than Pacheco's. So even on the limited opportunities that Pacheco may get, he's going to convert. He's at least going to put, that's a point right there, Every catch is a point. That's a point that he's going to put something good on paper every time he touches the rock. So I think that I've been one of the biggest culprits just kind of not looking Pacheco's direction this offseason. But I got to correct that. I think that Pacheco, I'm an HN guy, but I got to take him slightly over HN now. Like, the total opportunities on a really good offense where I know what your role is and know what your touches are, and he'll guaranteed get more touches than HN. It's all about the efficiency. But he has really, really high level upside. I'm taking him over James Cook. I'm taking him over Rachaad White. I think that his ADP is honestly fine. He's going 20th overall, kind of middle to late 2nd round in a 12-team league. I think that ADP is okay. I just think that there's so much upside for this guy. And if you were in fantasy and you remember those years with Kareem Hunt, we may finally be looking at Kareem Hunt's we finally get his replacement in Kansas City that we've been longing for, where we've had to just kind of do this mixing and matching of running backs since he left. We may have the new version of 2018 Kareem Hunt. So I'm really excited about Pacheco. All right, guys, let's get into these quick hits, okay? So I'm going to do some quick hits, talk about some injuries, and we're going to get out of here quick. All right, so Taysom Hill, They're really leaning into the Taysom Hill experience, according to Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. He's been used at 5 positions. I can't get to the 5th one. I got quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver. Unless he's a fullback, maybe. Not tackle. But they're saying they're using him all over the formation, and they're really investing in him. I think this is one of those guys where if you are taking an injury-prone tight end or a tight end who just you don't love the upside, let's say Justin Fields is the starter and you feel like Freiermuth takes a hit, I would not mind taking Freiermuth and then with one of my later picks taking Taysom Hill just to see what happens because they've put him at quarterback a couple times at training camp a couple times at training camp so far. And we know that those plays could just win you your week alone as a quarterback. So especially if your league format and your league website allows for it, just throw him on your bench. I don't think it hurts. And especially if you're in best ball, that's the easiest cheat code in the world. Just throw him on your bench all the time. All right. Next, we saw Tyreek Hill just got his contract, 3 years, $90 million guaranteed. 3 years, $90 million, $65 million guaranteed. No added years to it though. Head coach Dan Quinn said that Jaden Daniels will play his first preseason game on Saturday against the Jets. That's going to be exciting to see. I don't know how long he's going to play, but it's at least going to see what he does on paper. You're saying Puka got hurt at camp. I was not aware of that. I did not see that, but if that happened, that definitely hurts his value for sure. But I'll have to take a look after the show. The offense coordinator said that Achan improved his understanding of the offense, and he's made really substantial growth. I think this is Achan's season. He has RB1 potential if he could stay healthy. The health is a big part for him because he's so small. And then some other injuries. Josh Jacobs is participating he participated in Saturday's practice off of that groin injury, which is great to hear. Shaheed missed Saturday's practice due to hamstring tightness. That's not great to hear for that player in particular. Excuse me. Kevin O'Connell said that TJ Hawkinson is very well ahead of schedule, which is awesome to hear. It kind of sucks for Jay Jettis because you really wanted a consolidation of targets at the beginning of the season. But I do think for TJ fans, like this is another guy. There's a lot of tight ends in that like 8, 9, 10 area that I would be loading up on, and he would be another one of those guys. Like I wouldn't mind a TJ Hawkinson, Taysom Hill pairing to just kind of get you through and see what happens. And so I think that's something we need to keep an eye on. And then Lam McConkey left practice with the trainer. I do believe he came back to practice, but I'm not positive. Oh, all right, guys. Thank you so much for hopping in here. Again, I go by FF Strategist. My name is Toomey. You see it on screen, but I go by FF Strategist on TikTok. I'm on all the other socials, but TikTok is the main one, and I'm putting out that content all the time. Make sure that you guys check us out over there. Make sure you guys, every single person in here, before you leave, click the notification bell. Like this video. If you want more content like this, that's how we keep it going. That's how we keep the funnel filled. As no one would say, but as I would say, that's how we keep it cooking. If you guys like this video, if you guys subscribe to the channel, we can continue to put out this type of content for you guys. And again, check me out over on TikTok. And make sure you guys subscribe to this channel as well as the main player profiler on YouTube. All right, y'all. Peace out.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.